What's up everyone, Baker here, and today I want to put together a quick PvP guide for everyone out there for Shadow Priest in Season 3 for the War Within for PvP. If you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, make sure that you are subscribed, and enjoy. Starting off with the talent tree, if you wanted to go ahead and take a screenshot, I'll also have a loadout link down below for you to go and copy and paste, as well as for the macros that we're going to cover. Everything in this video that you are able to import into your game, I'll make sure to have a link down below for you. I don't change anything for Priest or for Shadow in this build. These talents always stay the same. Now, there are a few things that I do like to change, but it's going to be within the hero talents and the PvP talents. Starting off with the hero talents for Void Weaver, I know that some people like to play Archon, and that's totally fine too, but I like being able to Void Torrent and do my Rift. I think the Rift damage with Collapsing Void is just way too strong, and we're going to cover that in more detail, but speaking about talents that we do happen to change, the only talent that will be getting changed here for hero talent is Void Leech or Embrace the Shadow. If I feel that I'm going to be targeted a lot by my enemies, then I'll take Void Leech, so that way I'm able to siphon health off of my teammates to keep myself alive. But if I feel like I'm not even going to be the target, or maybe if I'm facing double caster, I like to go with Embrace the Shadow, which is pretty nice to have. It's just going to help with the healer, and you're reducing damage that you take. But when I see melee damage players, I definitely want to go ahead and take Void Leech. It's very helpful just to be able to stay alive. Into the PvP talents, I always stay with Phase Shift. This makes it so that your Fade will make moves miss on you. You can fade kidney shots, you can fade polys, you can fade everything in the game. You can just fade anything, any melee. This is mandatory to have. It's very important that you have Phase Shift because this will help you survive. This gives you survivability on Fade. And Fade is only a 20-second cooldown in this talent tree that we have. And that's just very important. That's what makes Shadow Priest a little bit tankier. So that way you're able to take that damage from enemies as they're coming at you. And also to be able to get away too. Because Fade gives you that freedom. And when you pop that, everybody's spells are going to be missing you. And you're able to just walk away. Great to have, especially if your healer is crowd controlled. You can pop a Fade. You'll be able to go and press that ability and avoid damage for that 1 second. Siphon, I love having Siphon. Siphon's on a 45-second cooldown, and when you push Siphon, it deals 1% of the target's total health and shadow damage every 0.8 seconds, but you're going to be slowing them by 50% and reducing the healing that they are receiving by 50%. This is very good to have. The healing reduction is huge, especially in situations where if the enemy is around 20 or 30%, you could throw Siphon on them and the enemy healer won't even be able to really heal them at all. It's very effective. The damage is nice from it. Now, Siphon does get killed very easily. It has a very low health pool, but you could pop this in and be able to cause a lot of pressure on players as well, because not only will you be able to land a kill when they're super low, but when Siphon is up, if you have double melee on you, you could push Siphon as you're doing your burst, which we're going to cover in this video. And everybody's always going to go and target the Siphon. Sometimes you can actually create gaps from melee players like a warrior or a ret. By throwing out Siphon, you can start pulling away, because usually you're going to be running with somebody who has another healing reduction, or as they call it, Mortal Strike in WoW. You're going to be playing with maybe a warrior, or there's so many different specializations in the game that have Mortal Strike, but Siphon definitely has multiple uses. But that healing reduction is very, very big. Now, Catharsis. I like running Catharsis, so 15% of all damage you take is stored, and the stored amount cannot exceed 12% of your maximum health. The initial damage of your next Shadow Word Pain deals the stored damage to your target. As a Shadow Priest, you're going to get targeted a lot. They are always going to be going you because you don't have a lot of mobility. You don't have a lot of mobility, and they're able to lock down your damage. They're going to be able to stop your damage because since you don't have mobility, you have to cast in order to do damage, and they could just trade kicks on you the entire time. You're not able to really get away. And so I like having Catharsis because that damage I could use for the Shadow Word Pain when I wind up doing my hero talent for Void Torrent into Collapsing Void. You can Shadow Word Pain, Catharsis, and Collapse Void at the same time, which we'll cover in our damage later on in this video. But there's a lot of damage that you can get with Catharsis. But you are able to swap this out. Sometimes if I face a Retribution Paladin Warrior, I like to go into Cascading Horrors, or even just double melee. Sometimes, if it's double melee, Windwalker Monk, I would definitely play Cascading Horrors just to be able to crowd control them a little bit more. And so Cascading Horrors is new. It used to be called Void Volley. But so after you cast Void Eruption or Dark Ascension, which in this talent tree, we're going to be doing Dark Ascension, which is every 1 minute. So you're going to wind up shooting these bolts, and they're going to do shadow damage around you. Every 0.5 seconds for 3 seconds, you're shooting these bolts all around you. And the damage isn't really that big, but it's mainly when they get hit by it, they all run away. It's the crowd control on it, where they're constantly crowd controlled and they can't even hit anyone. They're just, it's shooting all around you. Works really well, very effective versus melee. So if you feel like you're struggling into melee, try Cascading Horrors. It's amazing. Extra crowd control. If I do wind up facing a Shadow Priest or even Rogue Mage Priest, I like to go into Thought Steal. Thought Steal is a 1.5 minute cooldown, and you're going to wind up stealing an ability off of the enemy Shadow Priest or the Mage. You could do it on anybody with mana, but it's not as effective. It's definitely the most effective thing to Thought Steal is going to be from a Mage, which is Polymorph, and you steal their Polymorph, basically stopping them from being able to cast Polymorph, and then now you can. This is really good to do into Rogue Mage Priest to be able to slow down their burst windows. They're not able to get crowd control onto your healer, which is so big. They actually would have to shimmer in and do Dragon's Breath into a Ring of Frost, which can easily be shut down. You could definitely lock that down, but stealing that Polymorph, it's a crowd control that's able to be constantly casted, and you can just take that away. Now, if you queue into a Shadow Priest, you can run Thought Steal too, and you steal their Vampiric Touch. And Vampiric Touch is very big. This is the damage over time protection cast from Shadow Priest. So basically, when a healer wants to dispel all of the damage on their teammate, Vampiric Touch will wind up crowd controlling them, and they'll run away. But having this stops all their damage. Shadow Priest is all about having damage over time, and Vampiric Touch is the key to that. And because every time you do Vampiric Touch, you do Shadow Word Pain, and so by Thought Stealing a Shadow Priest, you're just taking away all of their damage for 20 seconds. It's really good to do this right out the gate. Right out the gate when you queue into a Shadow Priest, if you want to do this, you could just Thought Steal, and you could slow that damage down for the first 20 seconds. It's very, very effective. But for the most part, I usually just mainstay with Catharsis, Siphons, and Face Shift for my PvP talents. Hero talents on Shadow Priest, I always stick with Void Weaver. Archon is still good. I'm not saying Archon's bad. I just prefer to go with Void Weaver. Void Weaver gives me that big burst damage that I really enjoy doing with Void Torrent into my collapsing Void, which is just a lot of damage. So now with Void Weaver, what happens is when you cast Void Torrent, you're going to wind up summoning this Entropic Rift. I think I said that correctly. So the Rift will be doing damage, and it turns your Mind Blast into Void Blast. So you'll be casting Void Blast, which does a good amount of damage, and it'll also generate Insanity. And as you cast your Devouring Plague, when you have your Rift out, you're going to be stacking this damage modifier onto the Rift. So each time you cast Devouring Plague, Rift is empowered, increasing its damage in size by 20%. After Rift ends, it collapses, dealing 850k damage, 837k shadow damage, split amongst enemy targets within 15 yards. So every time that you are going and you are stacking this Devouring Plague, you're making that Rift bigger, which is going to hit and do more damage. And one thing that I really love to have is cancel Rift macro, which we're going to cover macros in a little bit, but because it's very important for this hero talent is you can explode this Rift whenever you want. You can explode it. You have the control to collapse, to collapsing Void on demand, which gives you that really nice burst. That Shadow, it has some burst, but not like snap on demand, how it does when you do collapsing Void with canceling the aura for Rift. It's very, very useful, and it'll get you a ton of kills being able to have that burst. Let's cover gear for Shadow Priest. You want to go with as much haste as possible. I want to go with haste into verse. I am going to be changing any pieces that don't have haste on them, and I'm going to wind up crafting haste versatility items. Specifically at the beginning of the season, as this video is being made, the boots did not have haste on them from the honor vendor. So I want to go through and craft haste, versatility, boots, and as well as the offhand. Whether you use one hand, offhand, or staff, it doesn't even matter. You can just craft everything anyways. But I just like to have the one hand offhand. And so I wanted to make sure that I went and I crafted haste, versatility, offhand. Now, when it comes to the tier, I wish the tier was a lot better for Shadow Priest, but at the moment, I wasn't really moved by it. I think the Void Blast damage, it's pretty reduced in PvP. It's reduced to the point where I just don't really see this being something that I want to go after because of the stat loss that I'm going to be taking, because the gear for Shadow Priest, or for Priest, it doesn't have any haste versatility pieces. I would wind up losing versatility or losing haste. So I'm actually not even going to use the tier. I'm not going to use the tier at all. But if you want to use the tier, sure, go ahead. But I would much rather prefer to have the stats, the raw stats of haste and versatility. Versatility is very, very big on Shadow because you're going to be the target of the enemy players a lot of the time. And I need as much haste as possible because I want to get those casts out as fast as possible. Now, with the honor gear for right now, I'm using Badge of Ferocity because the trinket has haste on it. Now, this is a 1 minute badge. This is an on-use trinket. So I can use this every 1 minute to increase my intellect. 9,800. I can't remember what it scales to in PvP, but it definitely goes up. Now, what is really nice about having this badge at the moment, until you get all of your conquest gear later on, and you would not use the badge because the conquest one has crit on it. But while you're using the honor one, you can pair this with your Dark Ascension since it's a 1 minute cooldown. So every time you're going to be bursting, you have that badge to use. At the moment, I'm using the rings. I wound up crafting rings and neck first with haste verse, just so I can get a ton of haste and a ton of verse, but mainly that haste is just so good. And I wound up using focusing lens. So that way, every time that I'm dealing damage, I have a chance to wind up doing more damage to them, depending upon the socket that I wound up going with. And this is just great passive damage to have. Some people might want to have the verse embellish. That's fine too. I don't think the embellishes are going to make or break the game, but it's just nice having passive damage. I also wound up going with the cloak. I'm pretty sure everyone's going to be using the cloak, but I wound up grabbing the cloak and I put haste onto it. And that is the gear at the moment for Shadow Priest. Also you want to make sure that you have the cognitive bloodstone. You want to have that so that way when you are faking interrupts, you'll wind up getting what people call in the game precog. And with precog, you are able to free cast and you can't be crowd controlled. So nobody can go and stun you and you can just start free casting. And you're going to be doing this a lot because you're going to want to be fake casting because everyone's going to be going on you. You want to make sure that you are fake casting so that way you can fake the interrupts. So that way it activates this bloodstone for you. So you can cast freely and not worry about getting interrupted and then dying because of being locked on your Shadow School. Time to do damage on Shadow Priest. Damage on Shadow Priest is super simple. What we're going to do is I'm going to want to throw in Shadow Crash out because I want to make sure that I get my damage over time abilities, which is Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word Pain on the targets. Now that they're all on the targets, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pop Void Wraith here to generate my Insanity. I'm going to do Dark Ascension into PI Badge. I'm going to pop my Siphoned out. Void Torrent, cancel it. I'm going to do Devouring Plague as much as I can into Void Blast. Throw out the Insanity whenever I get the proc. Void Blast again. And then I'm going to Collapse and Void Volley at the same time. That is what you're going to be doing on Shadow Priest. Just like that. That is a ton of damage. The reason that you're going to wind up canceling your Void Torrent very fast is because the damage from Void Torrent is not that great. It's not worth the risk of getting interrupted. Now, if there are no interrupts on the field, then I'll gladly do a full channel of Void Torrent. But just about all the time, I instantly cancel it. And right before you're going to collapse the Void, when you hit your cancel Rift macro, you're going to throw out your Void Volley. During your burst, if you do have your Catharsis, what I would definitely recommend doing is as you're setting your burst, you're going to wind up throwing your Void Volley, and as it's about to hit, you're going to cancel your aura so you explode as the volley hits, and then you throw Catharsis right at the end. That's what I've been doing. It's been working out really well. If you wanted to throw your Catharsis out with the Shadow Word Pain Catharsis damage as you explode the Rift, that's fine too, with it ending with Void Volley. Both are fine. They both do the job anyways. It's a ton of damage. The reason that I'm throwing Void Volley out right before I collapse is that the Void Volley has travel time. And so as Void Volley is flying over to the target, I don't want to collapse before it hits. I want Void Volley to be thrown at the target and collapse at the same time, as close as I can get it to hit. So that way that damage is just hit all together. It's just boom, boom, boom. Now, just in general though, what I just try to do on Shadow Priest the entire game is just manage my dots. And whenever I do have my Insanity up, I'm going to always just go ahead and pop a Devouring Plague out. I want to just make sure that I'm trying to get as much pressure as I can throughout the game. But if I see that my Void Torrent is coming up, and if I have a little bit more, if I do have like a little extra Insanity where I could, like I have a Devouring Plague right now, I don't want to just chuck it out. I don't want to just throw it out because I'm better off saving it right after I cast Void Torrent so I can add that extra Devouring Plague into my Rift to make it collapse even more. And it's just something that I like to do, so that way I'm not wasting the Insanity. But the entire time I'm just throwing out all my instant Mind Blast procs, and I'm throwing out Mind Flay Insanity whenever it does come up, and I'm Void Crashing just to maintain my damage over time abilities. And that's basically it. If I have a Shadow Word Death, I'll throw it out if I have it. And that's basically all that I do on Shadow Priest. Now, in that burst go, you can wind up before you send that burst go, or even between some of those abilities, you can wind up silencing the healer, or you could even go ahead and stun the target as you're about to collapse, or even stun the healer right after the silence. Now, that all depends on where you are on the map. If you're able to get a stun into a fear as well, you could definitely do that during the rotation. But that rotation is just, if you are free casting away, that's going to do the most damage for you. But you might wind up missing a global here or there, but it would definitely be more important for you to wind up stunning or being able to stun or fear a healer in order to create more opportunity for a kill window on one of the enemies in here. So it's definitely better to maybe lose a global here. Maybe you don't cast a Void Blast out or one of the Insanes, but instead you wind up doing a stun. And then maybe you spend a global while this burst is going on super quick to run over and get a fear right off of it to be able to chain crowd control a healer out, or even maybe someone that's trying to stop you from doing your burst. That's okay. The burst windows don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect all the time. Shadow Priest has so much utility, and I love utility. Now, with Shadow Priest, you have a silence, which you can throw onto a healer. You can stun, and you can also go ahead and fear. That is what they would call a CC chain. It's just multiple crowd controls, and there's no gap. There's no opener where they're able to cast anything because it's chained. They're all together. That is what makes Shadow Priest very strong, is the pressure to be able to have that. Now, even though we spoke about doing damage and silencing and stunning a healer, there's actually quite a bit where you're going to wind up crowd controlling an enemy damage player. For example, if you're facing a rogue mage priest, you can silence the mage, and this will stop the mage from being able to set up a polymorph or any crowd control onto your healer, which can disrupt their burst window. You could wind up going and Psychic Horroring a rogue. You could wind up stunning a rogue with Psychic Horror. And what that's going to wind up doing is he's going to wind up having to maybe trinket, or maybe gets dispelled, and then you fear him off, and you can lock some of these players out. Now, another thing that I really like to do if I am facing melee is I like to use Void Tendrils. A lot of Shadow Priests, they have trouble with melee. And a lot of players that play Shadow Priest, they feel overwhelmed because the melee is too strong. And the warriors are very scary. Melee is scary for Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest does well into casters, but melees can definitely chew you up because you don't have that mobility. I like to play Tendrils a lot. I see some people doing Sheer Terror. I don't care for this. Void Tendrils, I feel like, is better. because I can root enemies down and walk away from them. Now, they can kill the tendrils. It's on a 1-minute cooldown, but this will allow you a little bit of time to escape. I like to do tendrils, and then I'll fade out and pop my feather, and I'll get that run speed. Or I could even power word shield and get that run speed as well with body and soul. And this way, I'm free because fade gives me... it winds up freeing me from any snares, and they're rooted, and that stalls a little bit of extra time. I could even root as well. If I have 2 melee on me, I could root them, and maybe I'm in a crucial moment where I need to burst these players down, or I need to burst maybe a healer down over here or whatever, and I can go and root them, step away for a second, and I can start bursting the healer down or whoever it is. I want to be able to stall out a little bit of time with that root. It helps a ton. Now, if I do have a melee player on me in solo shuffle or in threes, what I like to do, and to counteract that, is I like to pull them all the way back. I'll pull them all the way back, and so this way, the melee player has to actually commit to me, and this will force the enemy healer to pull off of their pillar, because if the melee is... If you're pushing in, the melee is going to be on top of you, but he's not going to run around the pillar to go after you without his healer having to push in, and that will make the enemy's healer capable of getting crowd controlled by you or your teammates, because you have Psychic Horror on a 30-yard range and you have Silence on a 46-yard range. And so you have a lot of opportunity to get that range crowd control, which your then teammates can go and try to assist with that to lock them out. But I like to pull the melee players back a bit more. It's definitely very helpful, though. I want to include that in this utility because I know that a lot of people, it's going to be the biggest struggle is facing those. Now, if there's a hunter on the team, I like to use Leap of Faith on my healer. Leap of Faith is a 1-minute cooldown, 46-yard range, and you're going to wind up pulling your teammate to you with Leap of Faith. I love this ability. I think it might be maybe my favorite priest ability in the game, and the utility on it is just so good. So if I see intimidating stun, or intim stun is what they call it on World of Warcraft, from a hunter, I'll wind up using Leap of Faith and I'll pull that stun to make it harder for the hunter to be able to trap. You could do this also for clones, because clone has the range on it is not big. You can wind up pulling your teammates away from clones, or if they get kidney shot, if they get stunned, storm bolted, whatever stun is on them, you could wind up pulling them away from that. And sometimes you can wind up Leap of Faithing and some of the smoke bombs from rogues because you're gripping that kidney shot on them, or chief shot. There's a lot of really good plays to be made. Now, if I don't have Leap of Faith and I see that there is a trap that goes out, I could go and Mass Dispel that trap. Mass Dispel is so good. Now, it's on a 2-minute cooldown. You could PvP talent it into 1 minute. I don't ever do this, but you could. And this is very helpful to dispel any crowd control on your healer. That includes if they are in a trap, a polymorph, a repentance, a hammer of justice, a cyclone. Cyclone can be mass dispelled. And so make sure that you're looking for things to dispel off of your healer, because that's going to, if your healer's in crowd control, you're under pressure. That's very scary. And so as a Shadow Priest, you have ways to be able to assist and help your team with your utility to be able to avoid those situations, to be able to free your team of those very pressured situations. And definitely be using your Leap of Faith on cooldown, especially versus these hunters. And also for the Mass Dispel, you want to make sure that you're throwing that out. Also, you can Mass Dispel Time Stop from Evokers as well. Be on the lookout for that. If you're facing an Evoker and they Time Stop, you can Mass Dispel that Time Stop off, and it's going to hurt. Also, Mass Dispel works on Ice Block when you're trying to be offensive and you want to get rid of that Ice Block. This works on Spell Bop from Paladin. I can't remember what it's called. Spell Warding Protection or whatever. And even just on standard Blessing of Protection. But yeah, there's and also for Divine Shield, Paladin Shield as well. Mass Dispel is very big. This is a very big cooldown to throw out, and the utility on it is just it's a lot. Now, you can also dispel enemy buffs. You can do that. For example, Blessing of Protection, like we just spoke about, from melee. that a paladin has, you can hit Dispel magic. I like starting the game off when I'm running in. I like to dispel, if I can, if I have a moment, I like to dispel Power Word Fortitude off of enemy teams. I like to be able to go for Power Word Fortitude because it's going to reduce their HP by 5%. So when they have Fortitude on as a priest, you know, you get 5% extra stamina. You could take that away from enemy priests. I also like to use this to take away Power Infusion, even Freedom from a paladin. I want to make sure that I'm using Dispel magic a lot. Also, Resto Druids, they have heal over time, and you can just sit there and dispel that away. Now, it does eat your mana quite a bit, but it's just important to know that you do have this. So you can stop big cooldowns coming out. If it's like Power Infusion, you can just dispel that off. And there's a lot that you could do. Make sure that you're looking for that. Also, if your teammate gets mind controlled, if your healer gets mind controlled, you can dispel magic your healer. And that's on your team, and you can wind up dispelling that mind control off of them. So be on the lookout for that. I always will make sure to push Vampiric Embrace very early on, especially when I'm bursting. I just like to go ahead and do that. Now, also, what we have to handle any damage coming onto us is we have Protective Light. Casting Flash Heal on yourself reduces all damage you take by 10%. Now, I will throw this out on myself if there's melee hitting me. Sometimes they'll actually kick Flash Heal, and that's good because then I can start casting Shadow abilities. But if I do cast that and it does land on myself, then that's 10% reduced damage. And 10% is not a lot, but it helps. And honestly, you're gonna get targeted a lot. And so you want any damage mitigation that you are able to take, you want to have it. When it comes to avoiding any damage that's coming out onto me, definitely Fade is very helpful. Now, there are going to be moments where you don't have Fade, of course. It's a 20-second cooldown. But you do have Desperate Prayer. And Desperate Prayer, it's a 1.2-minute cooldown. Increases max health by 40% for 10 seconds and instantly heals you for that amount. I like to use Desperate Prayer if I'm getting really low. If I see that there's a stun potentially about to go out on me, like a kidney shot, or maybe even a sweep from a Windwalker monk, or even maybe I'm going to eat a hammer of justice from a paladin, and my healer doesn't have a trinket, or I don't have disperse, I like to go ahead and push Desperate Prayer. I like to push Desperate Prayer because it's going to pick up my HP even more with that heal, but also it could prevent me from dying when I'm stun locked, and maybe I don't have trinket or disperse for that. Disperse, I mean, I think everyone here knows dispersion, but this is your main defensive that you have here. A 1.5-minute cooldown. You push it and you get freedom. You get that speed increase from it. You also get a little bit of healing, but it reduces damage you take by 75%. If you push this button really low, you can still die. Don't think that you could push this button at 5%, 10%, and that you're just automatically safe. You can still die with this button. I'm okay trading Disperse for major cooldowns because it's on a minute and a half. It's on a minute and a half cooldown. And usually that shares with everybody else. Everyone has like a minute and a half, 2-minute cooldown. So having Disperse ready to go is very big. But make sure you press your Fade and try to maybe, if you can, flash heal yourself, or even just give yourself a shield. Position yourself a little bit before you just give up Disperse. You don't want to just give up Dispersion, but it is something to just remember that it is on a pretty fast cooldown. That's what makes Shadow Priest so tanky. But you also have that Desperate Prayer 2 waiting as well. Don't be afraid to throw out a Flash Heal on your teammates. Do not be afraid to throw out Flash Heal. Don't be afraid to throw out Power Word Shield as well. Do not be afraid. It's totally okay to do that. And if you see one of your teammates getting ran down by a melee, you could also Leap of Faith them. It's not just only for healers. You can grip out one of your damaged teammates and you could pull them the safety away. There's just so much to talk about. You know, there's just so much to it. And also, don't forget about your Void Shift. Void Shift is a very big cooldown. I say Void Shift for when I have nothing. I try my best to hold it if they're going after me. And Void Shift actually winds up swapping your health pools with whoever you're targeting. And it will never drop them below 25% HP though. So if someone's at 5% and you wind up swapping them at 5%, you'll be at 25. So it'll never take you to like 1% and then you're dead. Void Shift though is 5-minute cooldown, and I like to use this as a last resort unless there's just some wild damage that's coming out and I I see that my healer isn't going to be able to react to it in time, or maybe they don't have trinket, that's when I usually will go and void shift it though. I try to hold that for last. Shadow or Death, when you do push this button, it'll wind up doing damage back to you if it doesn't kill the target. And what I like to use this for is if I'm pushing onto another priest, or if I'm pushing towards just anybody in general that can crowd control me, before I land a fear onto them, I'll go and I'll Shadow or Death to ensure that I don't get crowd controlled myself before landing that fear onto them. Also, if they're trying to get crowd control onto me and I already faded, I'll go and Shadow or Death. For example, if there's a mage that's trying to polymorph me and I'm the Shadow Priest and maybe my healer doesn't have a trinket and they're about to get maybe full kidney shot, or they're about to get crowd controlled and they want to land a polymorph or any crowd control onto me, they're going to try to go for it, and I can Shadow or Death to prevent that crowd control onto me, so I can then save my teammate or whoever it is that they're going after. I could save them from that. Shadow or Death is very, very useful. If I see Ring of Frost on the ground for mages specifically, obviously because it's Ring of Frost, but I like to, I'll try to run over it and Shadow or Death so I can put myself on polymorph DR. So that way, I like to go and Shadow or Death myself, so that way they can't poly me full. It's going to take a little bit of time for them to go ahead and poly me full. So you could do that for yourself to prevent yourself from getting crowd controlled by mages. It's very, very helpful in situations, especially because when you face a lot of these mages, it's going to probably be in Rogue Mage Priest or some form of setup, and that's what they're looking for to try to land on you. And so preventing that polymorph on you frees you up to use your utility to help your team out. Macros for Shadow Priest, there's only a couple you need. You want to have a focus silence macro, and you want to have a focus stun. So you want to make sure that you can silence the healer very quickly without having to untarget, retarget, and then going back to whoever you're dealing damage on. And you want to be able to use Psychic Horror in the same way as well. It just makes the game smoother, faster, which you want to have. You need to have a cancelaura Rift macro. You want to make sure that you have this. Otherwise, you have to wait for the Rift to collapse on its own, and you can miss out on a lot of kill moments, kill windows to be able to collapse the void on top of your enemy in an arena match to be able to win, because it will wind up killing them. But sometimes if you take too long, then the enemy healer is able to pull them back up. You want to make sure that you have that damage on demand, and you need to make sure that you have this Rift macro, this cancelaura macro. I have a @cursor Mass Dispel. Makes it a little bit faster. I don't have to double click Mass Dispel. You also want a stop casting macro, just /stop casting. This way you're able to fake all the interrupts and kicks that are going to try to be thrown out on you. You want to make sure that you have this. It also makes it a lot easier instead of having to move. When you move to stop casting, you're wasting a little bit of time, instead of just having the stop casting where you can just hit one of your fast keybinds and zoop, you just stop casting instantly. This is very helpful also when you're doing your burst for Void Torrent to cancel that cast instantly. And you're going to get a lot of fake interrupts. You're going to be able to fake a lot of interrupts while having that. Last macro that you're definitely going to want to have is an @player angelic feather macro. This makes it so that when you want to give yourself feather, you just push the macro. You don't have to double click. You don't have to place your mouse anywhere for the feather. It just does it automatically. So you can get that speed increase and just get moving. It just makes the game a lot smoother. That's it for this video. I hope that you all did enjoy. I tried to make it as quick as possible. There's a ton of information for Shadow Priest, and I could talk about Shadow for a long time. There's just so much to it for the damage, the utility. I love this caster. Shadow Priest is my favorite caster in the game, and there's just so much to it. I hope that you all did enjoy, though, and if you're new to Shadow, maybe you're coming back to the game and you haven't played Shadow Priest in a while, I hope that this video was helpful to you. Maybe you're a veteran Shadow Priest and there was one or two things you were able to pick up in here. I hope that I was helpful to anyone out there. And thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. Until the next one.